David Tulis.
For years, June Griffin has sponsored the Constitution Dinner in Dayton. And if you want to read I would say, a very good piece of writing, one-night writing, a report about the most recent Constitution Dinner, go to the Facebook page of Nooga Radio and make sure to like our page on Facebook and read my account of that dinner. It was written on the spur of the moment, and yet I think it puts June in a true and good light, even though there might be some things that sound rather critical of her. It shows that she really has much right things to say, even though she is the bane of talk show hosts, even though letters to the editor overseers at the newspaper strictly control her output on the letter column in that publication, because she is so outspoken, she is so notable a character, cutting a very large figure in Southeast Tennessee and probably in the Southeast as well. She is, I would call her at age 78, the matriarch of the Constitution, and she espouses Christianity. She espouses patriotism, and the word for that, I think, fairly is called Americanism. It is a unique blend of ideas and ideals and worship of God, and claiming the benefits that God gives to fallen mankind through political liberties and through the protections that the state is supposed to offer the individual and the family. It is a kind of mix of Christianity and patriotism. She is an ordained minister in the American Bible Protestant Church, and she tootles about when she's in business and when she's on her own in either a 1992 Ford Ranger or a 2000 Chrysler SUV. And you say, well, that's an odd detail, David Tulis, to mention here on Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and FM 92.7. And it is because it's in those two contraptions, in those two, either of those two conveyances, that June Griffin, at age 78, the matron of the Constitution, is finding a new venue for the exercise of her liberties and her rights. June, what is the story?
Well, the story goes back to 1991 when I came under clear conviction that in order to truly oppose the Social Security system as far as a form of slavery, and it binds up the older people, and I wanted them to be able to get all their money back, to put a halt to this, and I wanted God to take care of me in my old age. So I made a covenant with the Lord that I would not use that number. I registered in the Ray County clerk's office, and little did I know that I was going up against one of the biggest tyrannies that's ever been in our history, the Department of Safety, who was bribed in 1996 with a $260,000 bribe from Hillary Clinton's Health and Human Services to force Social Security numbers on all applications to drive, hunt, fish, or work. I came under judicial scrutiny, you might say, ended up in every court you can think of. But in the meantime, I was impressed of the Lord to travel to every county in Tennessee on behalf of their right to post the 10 Commandments. And it was so hugely successful. God blessed it. I was not stopped for 6 years, even though I was driving under jeopardy. And after I finished that religious tour, you might call it, the Nashville, Tennessee, and put me on the front page, called me the modern day Moses, which is very humbling. However, it showed that the people of Tennessee want to stand by their right to post the 10 Commandments or whatever else they want to do under the 9th and 10th Amendment to the Bill of Rights. So it was on a certain day of our 44th anniversary that the Highway Patrol received intelligence that I was driving with our work, or let's say traveling in your language, to deliver some of our work. My husband ran a dental lab, and he happened to see across 4 lanes of traffic that I was not wearing a seatbelt. So he pulled me over and he talked to my husband like he was a dog. My husband wasn't even guilty of anything, but at that point I had paid several bunches of fines to try to get through this mess, being to avoid a lot of details. But I had received tickets after the incident of going across the state. So I proved my determination and if I could use the word integrity in carrying out my mission to reestablish the Ten Commandments, the Declaration of Independence, and the Bill of Rights. And I also proved that the people of Tennessee basically want their rights back and plan to exercise them. So this jeopardy that I have been under has been huge. And I also said in my original complaint, or at least my notice to the court, that it may be that this is the number of a beast, which the Bible speaks of. And I hope it wasn't, as I told the Chancery Court in Nashville. But however, if I can't hunt, fish, work, or drive without giving the number, and believe me, I've proven that. When you can't go to the money out of our own bank account. You can't vote. You can't do anything unless you give that number. And it's so common that my husband, who's been very, very ill, and I had to stop our work at the furniture store to take care of him. But when we went into the system, the VA, which they took good care of him. However, the first question they asked is, "What's your last four? What's your four?"
Your last four is your social.
They know what that was. The last four digits of the Social Security number. They didn't ask who he was. They asked, "What's your last four?" So this system has to go. We are individuals. God created us individuals and gave us a country to exercise the fact that I can say to you, I'm June Griffin, and I live at a certain place, and I'm not a number. So this is where we are today, and I am driving because I have to. I'm driving under jeopardy because sometimes I have to go get some medicine or something for my husband. However, I'll take that risk since it's my right to travel.
Well, let me ask you a question, June Griffin. In the 1992 Ford Ranger that you and your husband own, presumably, and the 2000 Chrysler SUV, what are you paid by anybody to carry people or goods from point A to point B?
No.
Okay, so you're not. So then, if you did, though, would you be in commerce? If you did carry people?
Well, yes, I would. I would if I were paid. Of course, I would be involved in commerce.
But just driving, let's say, driving to the VA or traveling to the VA by car or SUV, or traveling to church, or traveling into downtown Dayton to do some shopping, right? Or to go and pay a bill. You're in your car behind the wheel. You're controlling the operation of your contraption, your conveyance. You're doing that without being paid by anybody to do it, right? You're not a carrier for hire. Is that true?
No, I'm not. I'm not employed by anyone in doing that.
Well, let me ask you this: are you then in commerce if you're doing serving your private pleasures and necessities privately on the public right of way? Are you in commerce?
No, I'm not.
Well, that means then that you're not subject to the regulation of the title, which is Title 55 in the Tennessee Code, which covers the commercial use of the public right of way in commerce.
Well, one thing I'm interested in this, David, is my mother went to law school in 1944, Chattanooga College of Law, and she studied good law. And good law is based on basically the Ten Commandments. That is, thou shalt not covet, and that includes politicians are not to covet anything of your liberties or your property. So I'm interested in law, and I'm interested in the equity of the law. And the Department of Safety has so spread itself with its tyranny and extortion. That was an act of extortion that took place in 1996 from Health and Human Services, Hillary Clinton, Donna Shalala. That was an extortion to extort a personal hatred that Hillary Clinton had for men. And that was done in the name of deadbeat dads. And the equity of the law would not allow the Department of Safety to use the driver's license as a rod of punishment. For example, there was, and whether this is still in effect, there was a time in Tennessee in the last 5 years that a student who didn't get their grades would lose their driver's license. In Kentucky, it is so bad that if you go bankrupt, you lose your driver's license. So this tyranny that's coming out of the Department of Safety to use this as a rod of punishment to punish me because I am going up and down the road in my car, to use that as a rod of punishment to get even with someone or to get at them there's no equity. The law of God is equitable. And so I'm interested in the equity of the law, and you're not allowed to just grab, I use an example of, you get in a fight with your husband, say, we wouldn't do this, but you just pick up an ashtray and throw it. Well, there's no equity in that. Equity involves the equitable sides of both parties settling things in a proper manner. So the punishment that is exercised with any infraction has to be equitable. That's what that balance is with that lady justice. So this runs in me the wrong way in order to get these deadbeat dads, more or less. And there are the figure that I had was 65,000 people in Tennessee who had been stopped or arrested in some way for non-driving violations. Child custody, which is all the Department of Safety has wormed its way around with an outfit called Maximus, is now in charge of driver's license in Health and Human Services. So where this poor guy has had his license taken away from him, he may go to court and the judge would say, well, now I'm going to grant you your license because you need to drive. Well, Maximus walks up in Chattanooga, Hamilton County pays them something like $11 million to facilitate this extortion. And Maximus walks in. They have an office in Chattanooga, and they pick up that man's driver's license and say, "You're not driving." So the guy goes out. He can't do anything. He can't drive. He can't work. So what does he do? He blows the whole family away. His life is over. And this has happened throughout the country in massive situations where the whole family was just destroyed by this custodial attack by Hillary Clinton and her bunch of men haters in Washington. So this may sound like a peripheral issue, but it's not. And for Donna Shalala, Janet Reno, Hillary Clinton to take the tax money that comes from our income tax and shift it over to Health and Human Services and then dangle it in front of the Departments of Safety, and they take the bribe and then they call all kinds of havoc and inequity. So I hope I'm not too far afield from what you're talking about, but this is a matter of conviction with me.
This is David Tulis, and we're talking with June Griffin.
The right to drive, the right to travel is so basic. You jump on a horse, you take off down the road.
Well, listen,
you get in your car, you take off down the road. That's liberty.
Well, June, I appreciate
trying to restrict that. It's unconscionable. I mean, that's what liberty is be able to get in your travel highways, go to see grandma, go to your work without being hindered. That's what has made America so wonderful. Is the right to transport your family or whatever you want to do.
Well, this is David Tulis. We're talking with June Griffin, and the question before us is whether you, my listener, in your car are transporting and driving, and if you're operating a motor vehicle, if you're operating a passenger car in commerce under Title 55. Now, that's the question that has two answers. If you are, that's because you are in commerce. You are carrying people and goods for hire as a common carrier, and you are subject to regulation. Commerce and transportation are regulable activities. Now, June Griffin is saying, though you're not quite precise enough on your language, June, because you're using the word drive when you're saying, I'm going to church, I'm driving to church. Well, if you're going to church, you're not in commerce, so you are traveling to church in your car or truck. It is at that point a private use. You have a right to do it. You don't have to ask permission. You're not required to have a slave number, the SSN, or as they say, the last four of your social. You don't have to give or have the last four of your social to do that. That is a private activity at your pleasure. It is at your pleasure. It is at your free will. You are disposed to go on the road, which is owned by the people, stewarded by the state, and it is at liberty. It is not subject, according to my analysis, it is not subject to the Tennessee Code annotated Title 55, which is about transportation. And it is about the use of law to control part of the use of the road. That is to say, commerce. That's trucking, buses, cab services, courier services, straight body vehicles, dump truck operators, all the people who use the road for hire and for profit. They are subject to regulation under this title because they're taking advantage of your roads. The roads belong to you, June Griffin. And they belong to the listener. And as you represent the people, the state is serving and protecting the people. And so it's protecting your interest by regulating those who seek profit for gain on the public right of way for profit, which you're not doing, right? If you're just taking your husband to the VA after his as he continues to be in ill health, that's not commerce. And I would suggest that your defense, if you're stopped again on the side of the road, is, well, officer, you are making a presumption that I'm in commerce and that I'm in transportation, but I'm not. I'm simply traveling for private purposes in my vehicle. And do you have probable cause to stop me? And you see, most traffic stops, though, presume that the user of the car, the person behind the wheel, is in commerce. And that's and because we don't know how to defend our rights at the moment they're challenged, we are inadequate to the defense of liberty, which is to say private use. And so, are you not afraid to travel about by car, June? Do you have trepidation in your heart when you get behind the wheel and push your right foot on the gas pedal?
Obviously, you have some, there's this jeopardy that you're in. However, I kind of remember what was said at when they dedicated the statue of John Sevier. May the charm of living dangerously never leave the heart of a Tennessean. And we've always had that such a love of liberty, we were willing to pay a price. I think one of the main, I was thinking this morning after I talked to you, one of the main effects or the results of my experience has been to build records. Christian people build records. And the day comes when the record is open and the books are open. And out of this has come a revelation of the absolute tyranny that is exercised from the Department of Safety, which has been there since 1937. It was never intended to be that way. And with the increased corporate control of the legal system, you're in jeopardy. And yeah, there is this little twinge inside of your heart that maybe this is the day I'll have to go to court. And going to court is a horrible thing. And it's so horrible that these mayors across the nation are letting the Confederate statues be taken down because they're scared of a lawsuit from Southern Poverty Law Center or some other idiot. So this is where we are, and to go to court, and I agree with what you're saying, but at what venue will you be able to educate the deputy that's sitting on the side of the road, giving you a ticket? You hardly have time to explain to him, and then you're going to end up in court, and you're having to educate the judge who doesn't know the difference between right and to travel.
Well, you're defending what you're doing, June.
So
what you're doing.
We're in a fix.
We're in a fix. But what you're doing is you're being a belligerent claimant in person. You are being a belligerent claimant in person, and you have to assert your rights. You have to invoke, assert, and defend your rights at the moment they're challenged. So it has to be with a deputy who represents the commercial interests of the state. He's representing the claim against everybody in commerce, and he presumes you're in commerce too, because after all, your cars and trucks all have tags on the back, so that suggests they're in commerce. And that's why I'm always ready to be arrested. I always want to look nice, because I face as a person who is trying to understand my liberties and trying to live in fear of God and not in fear of man. I'm aware that he may put me into a situation where I have to submit and I have to be taken before the magistrate. I have to make a defense, and I'll have to assert my rights before the judge, and of course before the people. That's where. But remember this, June. If you're arrested for traveling on the public right of way without the proper papers, you have a great thing, and that June Griffin is standing. You have standing to appeal and overturn the system, as Jay Hirsch in Middle Tennessee is doing in his appeal. So you have terror, but you have a benefit.
It'd be interesting. The problem we face is the reality that I'm on the way to get some medicine for my husband. I get stopped and hauled into jail, and then where does that put our situation? So the best thing we can do right now for people like me that have laid our lives down for God and country and intend to do so forever is when I get
until death.
Ask God to save me from this horrible jeopardy that I'm in, so I can get back home, and hopefully people will hear what you're saying and try to fix it in every way that they can, through education or court situations.
The people who travel, June, the people who travel who travel and don't drive, right? People who are traveling, knowing that they are likely to be assailed and arrested, they have to rely more on God's providence and mercy, and they have to pray more than people who have insurance, than people who have who are in commerce, either really or not, and who are just doing what everybody does. The Mexican, the illegal Mexicans, and others who are traveling freely, and people like you, there are a few of you, have to ask God's protection and traveling mercies.
That's right, and I was reading about Abraham and Eliezer, and it occurred to me that the providence of God, is married to the faith in God, and Eliezer had to have that faith that Abraham had sent him out, and the angel of God's providence was going to go before him. It's very interesting to consider that in our Declaration of Independence, God's providence is a part of our heritage.
June Griffin, thanks so very much. This is David Tulis. We're chatting with June Griffin, and we're talking about her traveling about in her Ford Ranger or her Chrysler SUV. And we're glad you're giving us a few minutes of your time. Thank you so much. David Tulis, I've got some important messages.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader, Nooga Radio.